Does this sound like you? You remember you were able to think clearly and easily at one point, right? You could visualize things, you could create thoughts, and then one day you realize something a bit scary. You notice now you're struggling to think. You can't really notice your thoughts as well. And now you're even struggling to visualize. It feels kind of foggy. You may have even realized your memory is not as good as it was before. It may have got to the point where you even realize there's literally nothing in your mind, like it's gone blank. So now you can't even think anything. You can't bring up visuals in your mind, and that terrifies you even more. Maybe your memory has also started to be affected as well. So maybe you walk into a room and then you completely forgot why you were there in the first place, which further scares you because you're wondering, what is going on? Is there something permanently wrong? And then you may start to question this in a more scarier way, where you may start to wonder, if I can't think any thoughts, then who am I? What's my identity? Which then can make you spiral into further fear. If that sounds like you, then in this video I'm going to show you why there's a perfectly logical explanation for this, and it's not permanent. This is something you can recover from. So stay with me till the end, because what you will see is this is actually not just a mind or brain issue. This is a nervous system state. So it's a mind and body issue. And once you come to understand that after watching this video, everything will change for you and you'll see it's not something to be scared of. So I'm speaking partly from direct experience, where I had that experience for about 10 years. So what I described earlier, that difficulty in thinking clearly, difficulty in visualizing, and memory issues. So that's what is known as brain fog. And I had that for 10 years on and off, because that was a side effect of other mental health issues that I used to have, which were depersonalization disorder, anxiety, depression, maladaptive daydreaming, and video game addiction. And I was able to recover from these things with no medication. So that meant, I was struggling for quite a long time to think clearly, and sometimes also struggling to visualize things, and my memory was really bad. It was so bad that there were times where I would walk into a room and realize I don't actually remember why I'm there, but to the point where I didn't even remember the act of having something to do. So it would feel as though I just appeared in the room and I'm like, wait, why am I even here? Like, what's going on? But I also described another experience, right? I said some people have no thoughts in their mind, so they can't even visualize anything and they can't even think, which is scary for them because they start to feel like they're losing their entire identity. So the way I heard about that was one of my coaching clients came to me and described to me, did that experience where they said they have what's known as blank mind. So they literally couldn't hear or create any thoughts in their mind. They couldn't visualize. They said it was literally, there's nothing there, it's blank. And it wasn't like that before. This led me to start researching to understand what was going on, because I came to realize there's actually a connection between brain fog and blank mind. They're not necessarily different things. So I read this book. This is a very famous book when it comes to trauma and the nervous system and related things. It's called The Body Keeps the Score by Bessel van der Kolk. He's a doctor and trauma specialist, so I highly recommend it. And there was a particular page that I found, and well, look at this. This is very interesting. So can you see what it shows here? So this is a brain scan. So this is the scan of someone who had experienced some traumatic things. And what they noticed is this is the scan of the brain when they try to remember the traumatic things. So what you'll see here is there's like basically no activity in these parts of their brain. And I'm going to read what it says here. So it says, blanking out, in brackets, dissociation, in response to being reminded of past trauma. In this case, almost every area of the brain has decreased activation, interfering with thinking, focus, and orientation. Doesn't that sound a bit familiar? This also is part of a section of the book that deals with depersonalization, and dissociation. And that's a key thing to remember for this video. What that brain scan is showing is an example of the brain purposefully shutting down particular parts of its activity. And the specific parts are related to thinking, memory, planning, that kind of thing, which if you have brain fog or even blank mind, you've probably realized is quite difficult at times to do. And also it's important to know that that state you can recover from. So it's only a temporary state. It's actually a protective mechanism. So now that you understand that, that's going to change everything for you, because you'll see this is something you can recover from. So you might be wondering, okay, but why is this happening? Why do people get brain fog and blank mind? To answer that, first, we have to know that there is a big misunderstanding when it comes to understanding the mind and body and the nervous system. So most people have heard of the fight-flight response, right? So when you start feeling anxious or scared or even angry, that's when your nervous system is experiencing sympathetic arousal. That's when you experience the fight-flight response. There's also a third response known as the freeze response. And in polyvagal theory, which is another way of looking at the mind and body and is focused on nervous system states, it talks about something called the dorsal vagal shutdown. So this is talking about a particular nerve in your nervous system that, according to polyvagal theory, they believe creates a type of shutdown state in your mind and in your body. And this is a energy conservation protective mechanism. So you can think of this dorsal vagal shutdown state, which is part of the freeze response, as a type of emergency brake on your body and your mind. And this happens in a particular type of circumstance people can experience. This is the key thing to understand. When your body and mind experience high stress for too long, this is overwhelming to your body and mind, and is overwhelming to your nervous system. So what does that mean? Because your body has a certain amount of energy it can use, when you're in that fight-flight response for too long, that state uses up an enormous amount of energy, and you're not meant to stay in that for very long. Think of it like you're driving a car, but you've been on full acceleration, full speed for a very long time. You're going to burn through that fuel very quickly. So what does your brain do? What does your nervous system do? It puts on that emergency brake to conserve energy. And what does it do then? It prioritizes survival mechanisms in your body and mind. So it starts to gradually slow down that higher level thinking in parts of your brain. So it's prioritizing the survival mechanisms first. So that means it's not focused on long-term thinking now. It's focused on moment-to-moment survival. Does that start to make sense now? And does that start to fit your experience? You could think of it also like if your phone is low on battery, like 5%, it automatically goes into power saving mode. And what does it do? It starts to slow down apps, right? Its processing speed purposefully stops to save energy. So it slows down the processing speed so much, and also tells you you can't use certain apps. You could only do basic functions. It's basically the same thing happening for your mind. So in the same way, when you recharge your phone, it goes out of power saving mode. You can do something similar with yourself. So when you think about this idea of your mobile phone being on low battery and being very slow, or sometimes not being able to use certain apps, that's blank mind and brain fog happening to you. That's why it's happening. And I would go further to say the connection between brain fog and blank mind is brain fog is what happens when it starts to slow down processes. So it's been stressed for so long that to conserve energy, to protect you, to protect yourself from not just completely running out of energy, it will start to slow things down. That's when you have brain fog and it's hard to think clearly, hard to visualize, and your memory starts playing up as well. But brain fog is when that goes even further. So you could imagine if that stress were to continue for even longer, eventually the brain fog will become so much more severe that maybe you could experience blank mind, like in that example. Because what is trauma? That person in that example of the brain scan, they experienced trauma. I believe it was in a car accident. I think from what I remember the book described. So that's a highly, highly stressful experience that happens in one go. So you have this idea of the nervous system and mind being overwhelmed in one go. So that's the protective mechanism it has. So you can imagine brain fog being like your mobile phone being on 5% battery and it turns on power saving mode. But then blank mind is when it gets to 1% battery. And now it goes into ultra power saving mode. So you literally can only do the absolute most basic functions on your phone. So this is like a shutdown response. That's why I believe it's part of the dorsal vagal shutdown according to polyvagal theory. Because what can also happen is, and I'm guessing some of you watching this might be thinking this, you're thinking, I don't have stress and I don't have trauma, so that doesn't explain why I've got brain fog and blank mind. But that's a mistake I think you could be making. Because when people have blank mind and brain fog, assuming of course you've had things checked out by the doctor and there is nothing else going on, the fact that you have brain fog and blank mind is a symptom and evidence of there being high levels of stress for too long. Because what you probably also are experiencing is emotional numbness and physical numbness, because those also can be shut down or reduced when there's too much stress, because again, it's a way to conserve energy. It's a protective survival response. So you might not be feeling particularly anxious or stressed because your body and mind have previously been far too anxious and stressed for so long that it had to literally like turn down the volume on that signal to protect you. You might be thinking, well, how does that help me? How does turning the volume down, all those things, and going in power saving mode actually help me to survive? But you're forgetting something about your body and your mind. Because although we might live in the modern day, our brain and our bodies are still ancient. Think about it. We still have the same biology as our ancestors from even many, many thousands of years ago. And what kind of environments did most of our ancestors in the entirety of history live in? They were living in like the wild. They were living in more dangerous kind of environments where they were more likely to experience physical threats from things like predators, right? So that means, imagine if you were experiencing a threat from, let's say, a lion, right? In a village in like the ancient times or something. The idea of going into a survival state because the lion still hasn't gone, it's still there, that would actually benefit you because you would go numb physically and emotionally so that you don't have to worry about pain because you don't even feel it or it's numb. You don't have to worry about the fear or the stress because it wants you just to focus on the survival, because also it's trying to conserve energy. It doesn't know when you're going to get food next or get a chance to rest. It also will prioritize short-term thinking because it knows I need to just escape this lion. It doesn't matter about what's going to happen in the next hour or 2 hours. It's about what's happening now. So it makes sense in that context that those same mechanisms we've inherited genetically and we still have them. The difference is we live in the modern world. So that's where people get confused. So you might still be thinking, yeah, but there's obviously not a lion in my life. So why is my body and mind becoming so stressed? I have everything I need physically. So then why is my body telling me it's stressed? Again, there's a misunderstanding here because there are other ways of experiencing stress. There is physical stress. So if somebody, for example, had like an illness or let's say something like long COVID, that puts their body under stress for a long time. And that can create the same state where your body and mind are running out of resources and they're putting all the energy on fighting the issue from within. So then it goes into that state and is effectively like a trauma because it was in that overwhelmed state for so long. You can also have that same issue technically from sleep deprivation because your body isn't getting that physical need met for so long. So it's low on energy. So it goes, okay, we need to start energy saving by turning off these different apps or slowing them down. Then, of course, you have lifestyle and work. So if you're in, let's say, a job that is stressful and that continues for months and months and months, maybe even years, people can experience burnout, yes, but that can become then, that is still a stress. So you can get to the point where your brain and nervous system is like, yeah, this is too much. We've been in fight and flight for so long. Energy levels are going down. This is burning our resources. Start slowing things down. That's why you may notice sometimes you go to work, if it's a job you're not really a fan of, and you realize, oh yeah, why am I not thinking as clearly when I first started this job? Maybe it's too stressful. The same can happen for relationships. Maybe you're in a living environment or in relationships that are stressful, but it's not like one stressful event. It can be multiple ones over many years that frequently happen. These things continuously build up stress in the mind and the nervous system. And then you have unprocessed trauma. So with the example I gave before, a car accident, that's a clear example of physical trauma, but it doesn't have to be just that. Trauma can come from many different things. It doesn't have to be something obvious like that. They can be, for example, neglect from a caregiver. There can be all kinds of things like emotional abuse, psychological abuse. There are many different types of trauma that can happen. The same thing though, the same principle is there, where if your mind and nervous system are stressed out for too long or frequently stressed out, that stress doesn't just disappear. It builds and builds in your nervous system, so that charge never really goes away. So what that means is people are walking around with this built up stress. So then let's say they go into a job that's stressful, that just increases the load on top of it, which means that let's say they had 50% filled of stress, then they go into a job and now maybe there's 30% stress added. Now their 80% capacity is full. So then no wonder they're so stressed. People don't recognize this happening because it happens so gradually that your mind and body adjust to that level of stress, so you don't even realize it becomes normal. So I think of it like if imagine you're in water and the water is very slowly but surely getting hotter. Eventually that water will boil, but you won't necessarily even notice it because your body's been adjusting to the temperature because the temperature change has taken so long. But remember, I don't want you to get scared hearing these things. This is not permanent. You can change it because this is a natural response to chronic stress and unresolved trauma. Everyone's nervous system has a particular capacity of stress it can handle, and that's what can be known as your window of tolerance. So what's happening is people are getting pushed out of their window of tolerance so many times, or sometimes they're constantly out of their window of tolerance. So the answer to how do you recover from this is that you have to learn how to come back into your window of tolerance and stay there. That is what then turns off that low power mode and that survival state mode. That's when you start getting your thinking back, your memory back, it all comes back. The way you recover from this is first understand, don't try and force recovery. So don't try to keep forcing yourself to think clearly, or don't keep looking obsessively as to whether you can think or not. First, let that go, because I know what can happen, right? You can end up obsessing over whether the symptoms are still there or not. But what you don't realize is whenever you're trying to force things to work, you're actually adding stress. Because what I notice people do with things like blank mind and brain fog, they focus on the symptoms themselves, thinking that will fix it. But that's like saying that there's a fire and you're trying to fix the smoke alarm because the alarm keeps going off. Changing the smoke alarm isn't going to do anything. The smoke alarm is working fine. The issue is there's smoke coming from the fire. So that means you need to ignore the smoke alarm and stop the fire. Then it will stop ringing. Because think about it. Every time you focus on the brain fog and blank mind and you get more scared, that just makes the alarm go off even more. So here is how you put out that fire. Apart from what I mentioned before, let go and surrender. Don't try and force it. You then also need to look at your life honestly and ask, where is there stress? What is actually keeping this stress going? Because what you'll probably find is it's not just what's going on in your mind. Probably there are lifestyle factors there as well and relationship factors. So you might have to set boundaries at work. You may have to change jobs. You might have to change the way you have relationships with people. You might have to set boundaries with some people. Maybe you're just not looking after yourself. So maybe self-care is what you're missing. Maybe you have sleep deprivation, for example. Maybe that's a part of it. It's going to be different for everyone. You then want to focus on things like body-based practices like somatic practices. So that means there are things like yoga, somatic exercises. I did a video where I show how eye movements can help to reduce stress as an example. Things like long walks, things like gentle physical activity. The reason why that helps is because the body and mind work both ways. So it's not just your mind affects your body also affects your mind. So by doing things like somatic practices, you are effectively speaking the language of your body. So you're sending a signal of safety back to your brain. This is also why things like deep breathing helps as well. The main thing is to completely surrender to it and also continue living your life as normal as possible. You might think that's strange because I get it. When you have these experiences, the instinct is to not go and live like the way you did before. Your instinct might be to stay away from things that make you feel uncomfortable and scared. That might be your instinct. But actually, you want to do the opposite, because what you want to do is teach your nervous system and mind through direct experience that it's safe. So you're not going to be changing your thoughts because, if you're struggling to create thoughts, then it's not going to really work that way. It's about body-based and actual lived experience approaches. That's what you need. This means don't treat blank mind and brainful like an emergency. Just accept that anytime you notice yourself getting worried about it, remind yourself as best as you can. This is just the protective mechanism. This is from overwhelmed nervous system and mind because of chronic stress or unresolved trauma. And then find things to do during the day. Live as normal of a life as you can, because the more you do that and the more you completely allow the symptoms to be there while looking for ways to reduce stress, that's when your body and mind keep getting the evidence over and over again. Oh yeah, there's no threat anymore. And then that's when it starts to change and get better. But what about that fear of losing your identity? How do you solve that? Because I know for some people that sounds like something they think is unsolvable. Because from my understanding, what they are considering is, if I can't think and hear my thoughts, then who am I? And there's a misunderstanding here. Because you are not your thoughts to begin with. You are the awareness that experiences your thoughts. Same with your emotions, right? You have thoughts and you have emotions. These are experiences. They come and they go, but you are a point of awareness that can experience them. Your thoughts and your emotions, they are still important. They are a part of you, but they are not your identity. Because consider this, right? Your thoughts and emotions and everything else in your reality changes. It's never the same. The only thing that stays the same is your point of awareness that experiences them. This is something I came to learn after many years of meditation. So I learned quite early on in my meditation practice. I've been doing it for like 10 years, almost daily. And you can experience, it's happened multiple times to me, where you can have long periods of time of no thoughts. And yet you're still there. So you still have an identity because you are more than just what you think. You still have preferences. You still have relationships. You still have things that you can do in your life. You still have actions you can take. Just because you can't notice your thoughts or feel something, it doesn't mean you don't exist. You still exist. So remember, this is a state that is temporary. It's a survival state that can be shifted. So then, considering everything I've just shared with you, what's your next step? How do you start recovering from this? Because I need to give you a warning about a big mistake that I made for many years. I don't want you to make this same mistake as well, because I see people do this constantly, and you might be about to make this mistake right now while watching this video. Because the chances are, if you're watching this video till now, you are really serious about recovering, and I think that's a fantastic thing. Because what I see people often do is they watch these videos like I did in the past. I was doing research, I was reading books, watching videos, and I would think, oh yeah, that makes sense. I'm gonna do something about it. Then I close the video, and then a week later I realize I've done nothing. A month passes, I've done nothing. And that month can turn to a year. And I'm sure you know about that too, right? So don't make that mistake. This is what holds you back, because this is what held me back. There's the fear of change. Your nervous system, ironically in your mind, actually would prefer a painful, uncomfortable, known life than the unknown. which I know sounds strange, but when things become familiar, even if it's painful, part of your mind actually sees that as safe, which I know sounds paradoxical, but that's actually what happens. So then that can create that fear of commitment and that fear of actually trying something different. That's what held me back for years, and I literally wasted years of my life, and I missed out on so many things in my life because of that. So what that meant was I literally would see friends and family reaching certain life milestones, right? They would have these different kind of jobs, relationships, their own families, and I was stuck for years just not doing anything like that. I even had to quit a job at one point, and I was, even the jobs that I did get that were pretty straightforward and simple, I was even struggling with those. These kind of videos, I'm sure they help you feel understood, but that's just the first part of recovery. The next part is taking action. So what I wished I had was somebody who could guide me and show me how to get out of that. Because I literally had to figure this stuff out mostly on my own through my own study and practice and trying things out. So if you notice there's that fear or that temptation to not try and change things, then a question I have to ask you is, how much has staying where you are already cost you? Think about the opportunities you missed out on that you could miss out on. Think about things in your life that I'm sure you don't want to miss out on. So the next step for you to take is to talk to me directly. So I do one-on-one coaching, and I'm offering a free clarity call where we can have a proper conversation together, and I can really listen to you to understand what is your situation, and I can look at how I can help you. So click the link in the description below and the pinned comments to go to my website. If you find that the 5-session deep dive is too much of a commitment for you, that's all right. I also do one-off sessions as well. If you want just one conversation to ask anything you want, and I can give you general advice. So click the link in the description and pinned comments. That will take you to my website. Complete the 5-minute application form, and I'll get back to you as soon as possible. Also, I understand that this video went through a lot of things, and you may not remember it because of the blank mind or brain fog. So to help you out, I've created a 1-page free PDF guide for you. So click the link in the description below and in the pinned comment for that 1-page free PDF, and I will email that to you as soon as possible as well. And remember, this is not permanent. Blank mind and brain fog is a state that can be shifted. It's based on your nervous system state from experiencing chronic stress and overwhelming stress for too long. And it doesn't go away just by watching these videos, but it can go away when you start taking action to change these things. So thank you for watching. Don't forget to click the like button and the subscribe button, and I will see you in the next video. Take care.